And I'd like to welcome first David Sullivan from ADG. David, come on up. And Rick Kostick from Purity Cosmetics. He left some cosmetic samples for us out at the table, so thank you, Rick. Chris Barnett from Light and also Barrett Strategies. Chris is well-known, famous for having been in on the deal where Alipay bought iVerify and made it part of their global unit. So it's a real success story. And then Gene Banman from DriveScale. Gene. And that's it. And John Foster, Aikido. And that's it. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Okay. Well, good. We all need mics. There we go. Yep, we have one more. And you need to turn them on. So what we thought we would do is start this panel with just a brief intro from each one of them so you know what the context is for their remarks. So John, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So at Aikido, is that on? There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
So at Aikido, we've built a platform that voice enables the actions in mobile apps. And so the idea is that with the rise of voice assistants, the hole that we saw in the market was you really can't use your mobile apps very well with voice. You can do it very limitedly with Siri. You can't do it at all with Alexa. And we use our mobile phones and our apps all the time, every day. And we thought that the best way to bring voice to users was to start with an experience that's familiar, high utility, and something that we use frequently, which is why we focused on mobile apps to start with. So our platform enables all those actions in your favorite mobile apps just with voice.
Okay, good. Gene?
We make orchestration software for large data centers. We're focused on what are called data-intensive applications like Hadoop and Spark, and NoSQL applications like Cassandra. So our target customers have thousands of systems that are doing web-scale type of analysis or transactions. We just announced our first deal, Chinese deal today. With SF Express. They're using our systems in their big Spark cluster where they do all their routing analysis. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm Chris Barnett, and I've been a founder of several tech companies that, and my domain is the marketing and sales side, so I've led the transformation of those companies to bring the products to China. Both Vlingo, which was also a voice company, and then iVerify, which was a biometrics company, and which was the most recent one. And iVerify, we had Qihu 360, a Chinese company, as our lead investor in our Series A, and then we eventually sold the company to Alipay, and then I was on the Alipay team for a while as well after the sale. So that's my background.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rick Kostick. I'm one of the founders and CEO of Purity Cosmetics. Our primary brand is 100% Pure is the name. We have a few stores in the area. You might have seen them at Santana Row or the San Francisco airport. I started the company about 15 years ago out of a farmhouse in Napa, making the products by hand with my two business partners. And today we're bringing, it used to be that people from China would buy tons of our products from our San Francisco airport, taking them back. And then we launched on Tmall Global, and we had a very successful Double 11 event, and I formed a subsidiary out there about a year ago, and I have 14 employees out in China. So we're a natural, organic cosmetic brand.
So ADG, I went over to China in 1997 and lived there till 2014. Founded ADG in 2001, and we've been helping VC and PE-backed tech companies to enter the market and or expand in China through a bunch of different strategies of business development, licensing, corporate development. I'm honored to have two of our current clients, John and Jean. We're helping them in China now, and Chris, we've helped two of his companies in China. So really honored to have them join. But we've experienced a lot, and there's a lot happening now with China, and especially with the trade conflicts and the tensions, and also just China's transformation currently. It's a lot of interesting things happening.
Yeah. So we thought we would talk about some of the success strategies of these companies, and then also get into some of the challenges that they still face. So David, since you have worked with several of these companies, what do you think is the overall success factor?
There's a whole lot of different success elements. I mean, one is, I think it's one of the most important, is local presence and local engagement. And I find that some companies that try to fly in and fly out of China and try to make China work almost always fail. So if they're not ready to either set up their own team or find a partner that they trust, they should pass until they're ready. So the local presence and local engagement. Another success factor is really flexibility. Sometimes, a business model you pursued and were successful in Japan and Korea and Europe often doesn't work in China, and you may need to license your technology. You may need to create a different product for the China market. You also may need to even become Chinese and have a product that is not, a U.S. branded product, but a product that becomes a Chinese product. Could be through a JV, could be through another model, private labeling, but more and more, a lot of the Chinese entities, especially the state-owned enterprises, they want to buy from Chinese players. So that's a strategy that really needs to be looked at. And you have to be patient. I think there's a level of patience. You have to be in China, and you need to be knocking on the doors of these companies. And you can't just come in and say, hey, our technology's great, and expect a deal in 3, 6, 9 months. And they're also looking at saying, we've met hundreds and thousands of companies that come in, they get an intro from their VC or from somewhere, and they kind of disappear. Or they come in and they get impatient and they leave. But they monitor that. The Chinese partners and customers are watching that, saying, hey, are you here to stay? Are you committed? Yeah. And you got to, invest the time.
Sure. So that's easier said than done. So let's ask each one of you then, how did you go about this local presence idea?
I can start. So I had a few options. I could partner with what's called a trade partner, TP, we call them trade partner, pay them a monthly fee to manage the business. A lot of brands in the US do this, but I really knew exactly what you mentioned about when you want to, two things. One is I knew the China market was going to be bigger than the US market 5 years from now for our company. And two is the local presence. I don't want to operate with our US company directing it like my US marketers, telling them what to do. So I hired a team out there, and they operate it almost autonomously with a little direction from the US, although it grew really rapidly, and they like to spend a lot of money, so I have to kind of rein them in on that. But you see the sales. It's almost incredible how fast it can grow.
Did you have to change your product at all for China?
What's interesting is that certain products that sell well in the US do sell well in China, and certain ones do not. So one of our foundation is one of our core products, and it's a different foundation we have for that market. I think it's the climate, because it's a more humid climate. Yeah. So certain things like that, and then certain colors in color cosmetics. This year we're going to launch a specific lipstick just for 11 on Tmall Global.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We're producing just for that event. So local products make a lot of sense, and eventually I think even having a second manufacturing in China, maybe on a sub-brand or something, might make sense down the line in a couple of years.
What's going to be different about that lipstick that you're launching for 11/11 this year?
It's interesting. Just the color is for that market, but it's going to be a really red is trending, so it's going to be a really red. It's almost like the color you're wearing right now. Yeah.
Red.
You're right on trend.
All right. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Now, Chris, how about you? I know, iVerify was a tremendous success, but, that wasn't easy getting to that point, getting that big acquisition from Alipay. And I guess that your timing was good too, because if you try to do this now, it might not happen.
Timing was good.
Timing
is
was
the secret-
good.
Timing is the secret of success. Is what I've
Timing is
learned.
everything. Now,
So
would you say that iVerify was a sensitive technology that might have fallen into the cracks of Washington D.C. review?
possibly
Okay.
encryption,
Encryption, yes. Biometrics.
biometrics. So
Anyhow, go ahead.
I've done a lot of international sales. We're talking about China today, but for me, it's the comparison. I can take my sales team and go to Canada, go to Europe, go to Korea, and take the same people and the same stuff and say the same things and get kind of the same results. But for China, it's completely different. And I agree about the local presence, but for me, the company itself has to transform in certain ways in order to adapt itself to the market. The number one way to fail is to have kind of a wait and see, let's get an enabling customer before we commit strategy. That's never going to work. You've got to make the commitment first. And working with David, one of the things that we had at iVerify was we had like a 12-point, I called it the transformation plan, because there's a tendency for the founders to say, sales guy, go to China and then show us that you're right. It's like, no, we have to change the whole company. And it's a combination of a bunch of little things that sound really trivial, but like, do we have business cards in Chinese, right? Do we have people who speak Chinese? Do we answer the phone at 1 in the morning when someone from China calls, or do we make them wait? And there's a bunch more that
What did you do with that last point? That you did answer the phone, right?
We had a lot of arguments about it because
Really?
nobody else
God.
wanted to answer the phone at 1 in the morning. They wanted to just answer the email at 9 a.m. the next day.
Right.
But if you have somebody who speaks Chinese and understands your technology and is working 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and it's hard to get, some U.S. companies, especially smaller ones, to commit to that. They just want to answer the email in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
But you lose a whole day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, so this time difference can really work to your advantage, because while you're sleeping, stuff is getting done, and vice versa. I mean, I've used it to Silicon Dragon's advantage many, many times. And yeah, so it does work. Anyhow, yes, Gene, let's hear from you.
Yeah, well, it's easy to say to invest early and have a lot of patience, but we're at the end of our A round. We're going to be raising a B round. I don't have money to go do a heavy investment in China right now. So what do we do? So it's all about the connections, and we did invest in a system engineer in China, very strong technical guy, and we did hire ADG, who has a really good financial model that you can pay now and then pay a lot more later, which is very handy. So I did spend 5 years in Tokyo. I ran Sun Japan for 5 years, and I figured out that the business there was nothing like in the US. So, along the lines of being flexible, I totally understand that the business is going to be different, and we have to be able to learn and adjust as we get into the business. But we're bootstrapping. We're gonna grow the business there. We just announced this order with SF Express. We've got another order coming from a large bank in the next 6 weeks, and we have another order probably in Q2. And as that business grows, we'll pour it back into China. We won't be taking the money out, but we definitely have to grow the business as it develops rather than preloading it.
So tell us about this deal that you just closed.
Yeah, so SF Express does, they're the FedEx of China. They're actually larger than FedEx. The CTO was 15 years at UPS, so he really understands the package delivery business, but he's Chinese, so he went back to China to be the CTO at SF Express. Very, very deeply steeped in linear programming and how to get the optimal routes for their package delivery. They have a large Spark cluster that runs these algorithms. He completely understood how our product was going to make his installation much more efficient, lower cost, more flexible. He was the kind of visionary first customer that you have to find when you go to a new country. We were really lucky to find him. We found him through our board member. We have a Chinese board member, Connie Shen. Maybe some of you know her. She worked very hard for us. We made 3 trips to China together. Usually board members, sorry, Dixon. Usually board members don't work that hard, but Connie really worked hard for us, and we were able to get that deal.
Dixon said some of us still do, and we know he does. Okay. So are you talking about which Connie are you talking about?
Connie Shen?
Yes. Which?
From Nautilus.
Oh, from Nautilus. Okay. All right. So there's a good tip for everyone. Work with her and David, of course. Okay. Yes, John.
So we're a little bit different. We're not necessarily looking to sell into the China market, but we're looking to partner with, we sell one of our channels to market is through phone manufacturers. And so when you get beyond Samsung, every one of those is based in China. And we're looking to sell with them to the rest of the world, so outside of China. So we've been working with ADG, and having that local presence is definitely key, and having a team that is just dogged about, being in touch with people constantly. But then I think their work too is educating us and counseling us to be patient and working on us to figure out that it's not just going and selling to one group and you're done. There's a whole bunch of constituencies within, especially a big Chinese OEM, where you've got to get all these people on board. And so you make the sale and you leave the meeting and everybody's happy and you think, great, we've got it. And then we've got to go find the product guy. We've got to go talk to him. And then we've got to go talk to the business people. And it's that process of working your way through all of these people and having a team that can help you figure out who are the key constituents. And there's none of them that you can ignore, but who can you spend less time with? Who do you really have to spend more time with? And then they circle back and they say, these guys don't understand what we talked to. Right? You have a meeting, people all nod, everybody thinks you understood what was said, and then you circle back and no, these guys are still on a different page. So you've got to constantly be kind of iterating through and making sure that the message is there and that they're really, really clear on exactly what you do. I think that's been one of the challenging things for us. Sometimes we feel like we're kind of still at step 1. And we've been through 6 meetings, and it's just kind of, well, you got to have a step 1 meeting sometimes 3 times with the same people.
So was that surprising to you, though, when you were entering China? Was that, having all these follow-up meetings, was that a surprise to you?
Well, I don't think it's that much different than dealing with any other big company, except that, when you're a startup, right, you're trying to move fast, right?
Right.
So you think you took the meeting, you think you got it knocked off, and you're ready to move on to the next step.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're still at the first step. You haven't passed that go yet.
Right. So what about China, payment from your China customers?
We got it up front.
Payments.
We structured our deal so that we got paid in advance.
Wow. Who was that? Yeah.
It was Lenovo, Motorola.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a guaranteed set of payments, and it was structured in such a way that we were certain to get paid.
Okay. Anyone else get that kind of deal?
No. We were really taken away by how much investment the companies are willing to put into negotiating the price. And we would say yes, and they would say, oh, okay, that's good. Now we want lower. Okay. No, we want even lower. So we finally had to learn that we had to say no. Just saying yes didn't mean we closed the deal. As one of the ADG guys told me the story, he said, you wanted to have them only pay that price. I said, no, I didn't. He said, well, you took it, didn't you? So learning to negotiate is a big challenge from our perspective anyway.
Yeah, I think one thing is a lot of Americans and Westerners will go to China and they'll get upset and they'll say, they keep asking for discounts. They keep asking for discounts. And they're not thinking about our win. And I said, they're assuming you're thinking about your win, and that's the deal. Is if you keep going, they're assuming that you know what your bottom line is and you've put it in there. So there's a silk market in China where you can negotiate to buy, like, used to be fake North Face, but, just clothes and stuff. And it's that style of negotiation. They're not going to worry about your win, and they're assuming you know your bottom line. So you do have to, that's also why you have to have trustworthy staff or partners that are getting the insights from inside the organization. Like, what's the real budget? What's the real bottom line? And also on that point is, if you're flying in and flying out, or you don't have deep relationships with a customer or partner, you don't know so much what's going on. You don't know if they have their own product in development. You don't know where your competitors are positioned. You often don't know. There might be 16, 20 different people in the decision. Who are the 2, 3 key decision makers? It might not be Mr. Big. It might be this product manager at the bottom has the most influence. And that's why when you come into China, you have to really engage deeply with these organizations, and you got to have trustworthy partners that help you figure that out.
I would say the other side to, you know, when somebody comes back and wants to renegotiate, the other side to it is they're not surprised and they're not mad if you say, well, what am I going to get in return, right? So, you know, you were going to pay 10, now you want to pay 9. Okay, I'll take 9, but I also want something else. And that part of the negotiation, you have to, I think we kind of get accustomed to, you reach a deal, you got a deal. You feel a little bit bad about, you know, asking for more than when you got a deal. But if they're going to ask, I'm going to ask. And it's not, nobody takes offense at that, right? It doesn't make people angry. It's just
That's a great point, is when you're going through this negotiation process, sometimes it gets down to this young procurement manager at Huawei or Xiaomi or Alibaba who seems like they're just out of college. They say, well, can we get 5% more discount? And it's already been through multiple rounds, and you got this young girl just asking, and how long did it take her to ask? Less than a minute. Can we get 5% more? And you got this American VP of BD. He's like, we got to close this deal. It's Alibaba. I got to close it. Okay, 5% more. And how hard was it for her to ask it? 1 minute, less than a minute.
So at that point,
you got to say sorry, or you got to do what John said. It's like, okay, we can do it, but I need you to do a press release, and I need this, and I need this, and I need that.
Right.
And don't be afraid to do that. That's a great point.
Yeah, the value add, right?
Get more.
Get more.
It's always a negotiation. It just keeps going until you finally both all decide you've got everything you want.
Okay.
So when I first brought the CEO of iVerify to Beijing, I was trying to educate him on all different cultural issues and the negotiation. One way we did that, we were in a park after dinner, and the street vendor was selling these little lasers that you can't get in the US because they're probably illegal. And the lasers were 100 RMB, and he wanted 4 for his kids. And he was going to pull out 100 RMB. I'm like, what are you doing? So I offered the street vendor 2 RMB. And he was just mortified that I would insult her by offering 2 when the price was 100. And I eventually got them for like 8.
This happened to me in Xi'an. You know, you get the little Xi'an statue, whatever you call them.
Terracotta warriors.
Yes, the terracotta warriors. Yes, so you know they were there, and you know people were buying them. I thought, okay, fine. And then someone else walked up and paid like 1/10 the price. So this.
If they say 100, you say 5.
Right.
Or 10. Then you walk
Right.
away a few
Right.
times. And, yeah.
And in this case, there's no value add really that you can negotiate.
It's actually good training is for Western business people is to go to these little markets first and spend a couple days negotiating,
That's what I
buying
did.
trinkets,
Oh yeah.
gifts, and then kind of learn the style.
Yeah, is that what you did, Chris, to get
That's
them?
why I did that. Yeah, that was
yeah.
all. So here's another one that most people don't see this. So one of the largest companies, and we're doing the negotiation with the commercial team, and we're going back and forth on price, and we're exchanging documents, and he accidentally sent me an attachment that was an internal document. And I destroyed it because it wasn't our information, but I did read it first.
And memorized it.
Right. Well, it was his internal worksheet, like vendor negotiation worksheet, right? And at the very top, it said list price. And then it had 12 rows, 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round. It had 12 rows. And then at the bottom, it was final purchase price. And then it had his compensation calculation. His base salary and what bonus he got was based on the dollars from the list price. So I thought, I need to raise my list price, make this guy more money, and get a higher price for me.
Raise the list price.
That's a great story. I love that. So We often hear it from the West. We hear the story from China that our products are getting copied. There's so much counterfeiting. There's no regard for intellectual property protection. Have you faced this issue in China with your products? Have you seen, maybe a customer that you're dealing with, then all of a sudden goes off and does a parallel product, just like does a knockoff product like yours? Have any of you faced this issue? Are you brave enough to talk about it?
Yeah, I've seen it in my industry, my friends that have product out in China. I'm sure that there's knockoffs of our eye cream is one of our most popular, our coffee bean eye cream. I guarantee you there's a fake coffee bean eye cream around China. Yeah. The nice thing is if we sell through certain channels like Tmall Global, they know they're getting the authentic product. And actually, they've even upped their effort. I was talking to my China general manager the past couple days. Alibaba has upped their effort on transparency. Now, transparency is a huge theme I think it's going to permeate the US as well, but it's starting to become really, really big in China, or already is really big. And they want to come out and audit my factories, or send auditors to my factories. And then through Tmall Global, I show the pictures of the factories, the reports. We need to show so much more to the China consumer than the US consumer. They want to see every single organic certificate we have. They want to see every GMP certificate we have up there on the buying page, which is something you just, you go to any cosmetic website, you don't see all the certificates.
This is the actual consumer wants to see
This is
all
the
this stuff.
the consumer.
Customer.
Both.
Oh,
The
business
consumer is
and
demanding it, but now
the
Tmall
consumers.
Global is picking up on it and requiring it
I
of
see.
suppliers. So now I'm required to provide GMP certificates for all the products. The consumers want even more, but Tmall Global is requiring a certain level of it. But it makes sense with all the fake products, and perhaps in the US we'll have this problem later on, and transparency is going to become a big theme.
Yeah,
in
no,
consumer
I
products.
remember visiting the Hema grocery stores in Shanghai and elsewhere, and the JD has their own brand of these, e-retailing stores, and all the all the food ingredients are listed on these screens, and the origin of the product, and where it was shipped from, and when it was shipped, and they're all on screens.
And maybe they want videos too of because they want pictures of my factories too. That's a
They want
requirement of
video?
Alibaba of Tmall Global that just happened was pictures of your factories too.
They want that. Oh, they want pictures of your and videos too.
Yeah, which is great. I think it's a great initiative
Well-
to show that it by having that, and I want to put that on our U.S. pages too because I think that will help with
Yeah.
conversion. It's kind of like there's a clothing company, Everlane, that shows its factories that it produces from. I think that's a great trend, transparency.
Okay, and have they interviewed you? I mean, do they want your voice to be out there as well?
They do, so they constantly want videos of me in my office working, my business partner too, creating the products, yeah. Because they don't believe, they say, oh, consumers, they don't even believe you are a real US company, they think you're a China company.
I see.
And so they need to see because we have physical stores too, so they want to see pictures of all our physical stores, everything to prove that we're a real US company. And especially now with, more censorship, how do they know we're a real US company in the China market? They just, Bing, right, got just a few days ago got canceled there. So
Sure.
there's no way for them to figure it out. So we have to provide them all the evidence.
That's really interesting. Do you have a Chinese name for your product? Did you change it? Did you come up with a China-sensitive name of some sort?
Baichuan is the company name, but we still used 100% pure as the brand name.
I see. I see. Okay. Interesting.
So we assume the product's going to be reverse engineered. We actually know the teams at AWS and Facebook that are working on doing exactly what we do for their own use. We've done everything we can to hide the source code and compiled everything so that you can't just copy it. But reverse engineering it is another story. It's hard. It's a hard product to develop. We've spent years getting it to where it's at, so it's going to take some time for anyone to reverse engineer it. We just figure it's going to happen, and we just have to keep running fast.
Yeah, I think the best defense is a good offense in China and globally. I mean, I think when you're coming into China, partner selection is one of the keys to protecting your IP, and partnering with companies that have the most to lose, whether they're going global or they're listed on NASDAQ or they're listed in Hong Kong. So partner selection is really important. When you start getting out to some smaller tier 3, tier 4 companies that are maybe very local, they have no international business, you can start to feel like in meetings, you'll start even seeing the questions they're asking are, you don't need to know that. They're getting a little too deep in the technology, and then you got to pull back. But if you're working with the tier 1 companies that are going global or that are listed, you reduce your risk of IP loss. I think also companies like Alibaba and Xiaomi and Huawei, they're moving so fast that, and they have top-down directives not to take IP. And they have too much to lose reputationally and legally. But, they understand the need for partnerships. Huawei used to try to do everything themselves, and now they said, hey, we know we need partners. We're falling behind. So you got to work with the right companies.
So, and I understand that if you are faced with this patent situation in China and you do bring a lawsuit, that you have a good chance of, being heard and actually, possibly winning it.
Yeah, and it's faster than the U.S. Like these patent courts are moving really fast. And there was even some recent policies in China about IP protection and IP enforcement, and they're getting quite serious, especially as China creates more IP themselves. They're getting more serious about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so to bring up another kind of dirty topic, we talked about the patent protection. What about technology transfer? Some of you are in deep tech stuff, and so have you dealt with this situation where we're not going to do business with you unless you transfer some tech in to us? So how do you deal with that?
So we haven't seen that. We don't do business, like I said, in China itself, so we don't necessarily come subject to those kinds of rules. What we do see is people wanting to say, well, because we have a cloud platform, and they say, well, you should let us host this in our cloud. And so I think that's where the rubber's really going to hit the road around that is, how much can we expose to them, and then in particular, how much data are they going to collect, and how are we going to share data, right? Because user data, behavioral data, all those kinds of things are sort of integral to what we're doing. They understand the value of it. We understand the value of it. And so that's I think where the discussions are going to get a little more thorny, is particularly around user data. And now you have GDPR and all kinds of other kind of regional regulations around how do you have to treat user data, personal data, or PII kind of data. So that's, I think, going to become much more difficult to deal with.
Well, it's anyone else facing this issue, and if so, what are you doing about it? Because data, it's one of those key drivers today in China.
Sure. So I was going to say, on the protection piece, the IP piece, as the head of sales, what I faced is founders or CEOs will say, well, we're not sure we want to license our technology to this company because they might reverse engineer it. We have our app, and we're afraid someone will steal our app. Mm-hmm. And what I usually say is, your app's in the App Store. You don't have to do a deal to get ripped off, to get reverse engineered by anybody, anywhere. They can go to the App Store and attack you that way. Mm-hmm. And in reality, by going and engaging and doing a deal and getting a license, that at least you have a piece of paper that says they can't reverse engineer it, whereas if you stay home because you're afraid, you've actually got zero protection.
Right. Yeah, and on the forced transfer, there's a lot of media and Washington talk about forced technology transfer. And from our understanding, we've never seen it helping 100 companies over 18 years. I think.
Why do you think that is, David?
Well, it's mainly in select industries where JVs are required. So I think what they're talking about is if General Motors wants to manufacture and sell cars in China, they have to do a JV. And then they do a JV, they need to transfer technology to that JV. So they have a choice to join the JV or not. They have a choice to do it. So it's forced because you have to transfer the technology to the JV to create the cars and do the products. And there's a couple of industries that are protected, and I think it's going to change. I think this pressure that's coming from the U.S. administration, and just I think China has also risen from this developing market status up to the second largest economy in the world. they can't use that, hey, we're a developing country, we can't let you in story as much as they used to.
Right.
So that's changing, it's going to change.
So how are the current trade issues, U.S.-China trade issues, impacting your business?
We actually haven't seen it, and we were in China in December. We landed the day before Huawei's CFO got arrested in Canada. And I was a little concerned about kind of what reception we'd get, but we met with teams there, and very, very friendly reception.
At Huawei.
You know, at Huawei, yeah. But as a team we'd met before, and we had a very, very friendly meeting with them, and so just no issues whatsoever. So I think it's,
I mean, it wasn't even talked about?
no.
Really?
Not a mention.
Wow.
Nothing. No. Which, you know, I think it was kind of. Well, I think it was that, you know, there wasn't kind of an official position. And so I think it was probably easier just to pretend like it, you know, we're not going to talk about it because nobody wants to get sideways with one another on that. And so I think it was just easier to just ignore it. But it was, I mean, it wasn't even a cool reception. It was a very friendly meeting. So I didn't see it at all.
Yeah, I had a very dollars and cents impact. I just wrote a $44,000 import duty check to the U.S. government for importing our little piece of hardware that's built in Tianjin.
Well,
Painful.
do you have to import that particular piece?
Yeah, so Foxconn is our manufacturing partner. They were our first investor, and they build our little piece of hardware in Tianjin. That's the only place it's built. So, yeah, we didn't used to have to pay duty, and now we're paying 10%.
Wow, that's a big hike.
Yeah, we got impacted somewhat with the trade war, and actually Tianjin is where my office is, where they're making that. But we, on twofold. One is we get primarily a lot of the packaging from the cosmetic company comes in from China. So on that front, we're paying an extra, you know, sometimes 10%, sometimes 25% duty on that, in which case I've asked my team to negotiate more with the factories and use that as leverage to get the price down, and it's working. We've actually got the prices lower at our production factories in China to help offset it. But
You too, Gene?
What's that?
Are you agreeing with his?
Oh, I'm
saying
going
what
like,
he
I
said?
think I got to go back to Foxconn.
yeah,
Oh,
we
he's
use
got to go
that-
back
use-
to Val.
Use that as a
Reduction.
negotiation. Our margin, we need you to, you know, you're a partner, we need you to take the hit with us and
Oh.
be in this with us. And
Yeah.
I've seen our purchase orders go down a little bit because of that. And then on the selling side, not much impact. Our business is still growing like crazy out there. But the one thing I see in the general market out there is a growing nationalistic movement in cosmetics where consumers are looking more favorably on China cosmetic companies. So I think the trade war is somewhat fueling that.
I mean, one thing we haven't seen yet, personally, I mean, it's been business as usual in the last couple of quarters. We haven't seen the China media machine be too anti-America, which is very good. And because I lived in China many years, and I've seen these waves of don't buy Japanese when they're debating about a Japanese island, Chinese Japanese island. People stop buying Toyotas and they stop buying Sony TVs, and it happened to Korea and the Samsung stop buying Samsung, and I haven't really totally felt it or seen it. I think maybe people who are on WeChat all day might see more of it, but
Yeah, maybe.
we haven't really seen it yet, and hopefully it won't get there because that would be a bad thing for U.S.
Yeah, because to pick up on Rick's point of, the kind of the Chinese consumer pushback to American brands, I mean, this coffee brand, Luckin, has gotten ahead very fast, in part, well, efficiency and lower prices, and it's given Starbucks a run for the money in China.
Yeah, they opened one in my office building in
yeah?
China, and my employees buy from Luckin.
They like it? Did they
They
like?
like it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I tried it. It's pretty good.
it's okay.
Yeah.
I have heard of some people saying some very large deals with state-owned enterprises have been delayed or put on pause. So I think there might be a dichotomy between dealing with private companies, the Alibabas, the Xiaomis, the Huaweis, versus some of the state-owned enterprises. So there may need to be different strategies for state-owned enterprises versus the private sector in
I
China.
see. Right, right. So what about the slowing economy in China, and how is that impacting your business, and what are your end goals for the China market? Rick?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, the slowing economy, because it's still growing fast. I actually asked my general manager the question a couple of days ago, and he hasn't given me a straight answer that anything has slowed down. But I know the economy is slowing, so I'm expecting it and trying to be more conservative. But
In your projections?
in my projections, and trying to say, hey, maybe we should rein in spending a little bit and try to focus more on profitability rather than just growth because of this.
So overall, your China business is what proportion of your overall business?
Right now, it's about 5%, I would say,
Okay.
somewhere
so you
around
have a
there.
long runway then?
Yeah, we have a long runway, but I expect it to be bigger than our U.S. business. And right now, 90% of our business is U.S. business.
And when do you expect that tipping point to happen?
Within 5 years, for sure.
Okay. That's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, well, with the market, the size of it,
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen regardless of how aggressive we are
Right. Well, why did you go into China in the first place?
because of the market size.
Just the market size?
That was, that was the main draw, was
Right.
that I knew that this economy, this was years, 5+ years ago, even 10 years ago, I knew the China economy is going to be bigger than the U.S. economy. The market size is going to be bigger. I need to get a foothold in there. And distributors and partners approached me all along the last 10 years saying, let us manage your China business. We'll do it for you. You don't have to worry about it. But I always thought, this is going to be the biggest market. Do I really want someone else running my business in this market? No, I want to have some kind of control over where I'm going to have the majority of my sales.
Others on this question?
Sure. So with the companies that I'm working with, my advice, my framework is, your emphasis, your weighting of your resources should really be, equal U.S. and China, even though you're here, because of the size of the market, right? Maybe it's harder, it's far away, but in terms of the opportunity, it should be an equal weighting. I think you do need to, for me anyway, you do need to really focus on sales and revenue and customers as opposed to investment. I do think in the current climate right now, I would advise clients not to try and raise money there or try and invest there. But from the standpoint of selling product, I think it's business as usual, like David said.
Yeah, our target customer has huge amounts of data. China has lots and lots of data. So there's a lot of big data centers running a lot very data-intensive applications over there. China is our first non-U.S. target.
Because of?
Just those, it's a target-rich environment for our product. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. So any surprises with your journey in China?
Where do I start? Yeah, it's
Well, whatever comes
it's
to
very
mind.
different to do business there. We talked about the negotiating style as a
Yeah.
big deal. You talked about the meeting after meeting. We just had a meeting with this big bank, and he went through our test results from a very, very long proof of concept testing we did, and he's telling us how to revise our own report. I think he's planning to use it, with his chain of command, but he's dictating the edits to our report, and it's like, okay, we'll make the changes for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you do business with them, and then do they own the data?
They do own.
They
it.
do own the data. They own. And
Yeah, we run the plumbing for the applications that run on top of us.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't actually see any data.
Isn't that kind of scary? Alibaba does the same thing, right? They own the data.
Yeah,
How do you deal? It's not scary.
well, it's just like if you think about the U.S., Amazon owns the data. They don't share their data with us at all, and that annoys me. So it's the same annoyance that you
Okay,
don't get access
same
to the
annoying
customer data in China. But
But you're an American company in China.
Right. So we don't know the customers exactly. We just know the sales data. That's it.
All right. So,
I mean, one trend I'd
Yeah.
like to just mention.
ahead.
Maybe John, after words,
Yeah.
you can mention some things. But one thing that when people think, hey, when they think of China, they often think of the China market as a destination. And
right.
more and more what we're seeing is a lot of China players are going global.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're an American company and you want to address Latin America, you want to address India, you want to address Africa, Eastern Europe, Russia, with technology, it could be consumer or it could be enterprise. These guys are going global. So I mean, we've done tens of millions of dollars of deals for one company with Huawei, and none of it was in China. And companies like Inspur doing servers, they're going global. Lenovo's global, Huawei's global, and others you've never even heard of are in Africa,
Yeah.
like Guang. They're in Southeast Asia and India,
Brazil.
Brazil.
It's
And
all over
and that's what
Southeast
John's
Asia.
strategy is. iChudo's strategy is that it's work with China for outside of China. So when sometimes you're looking at, you're a VC, you're looking at your portfolio, you're thinking, we're not going to do China. You could be missing this massive opportunity as a company or investor of global via China or emerging market via China.
Right.
And there's tremendous opportunities for that.
Right. So if China gets too tough for any of you, would you consider changing your strategy, going elsewhere in Asia? India? Yeah?
Yeah, well, India is a big growing market for cosmetics, so yeah, India as well. But the only thing that could get really tough in China for us is, you have to respect the government and their policies. And, if you make a misstep, they could easily pull my
Right.
business license. And so that's probably the biggest risk, although
Yeah.
I think we operate in a good way that won't happen. So I think our business in China is pretty solid.
Have any of you experimented with some of these new mobile commerce apps, like the WeChat mini apps?
Yeah,
Mini
all
stores?
my communications with the people in China is all on WeChat.
Okay.
Yeah, all on WeChat.
Do you like that or not?
It's okay. I mean, it actually is a nice way to segment my Chinese business from my
Oh, okay.
email. So
Well,
I
that's
just go to
true.
WeChat and do all the Chinese stuff all in one place.
Yeah, my
Right.
teams complain to me about how come the U.S. team, they always use so much email? Why do they always use so much email?
know.
We have to wait till the next day to
Right.
get their email, and everything is so slow. They think the
Yeah.
U.S. way of business is so slow.
Yeah.
And so I have a actually tough time trying to get my U.S. team to download WeChat, and I say use WeChat and talk to them and get the thing settled right there at the end of the day.
Right.
And we also do the WeChat selling in China, and that
the mini shops.
yeah.
You're using those.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with what exactly we're doing, but it's a
Yeah.
big part of
Okay.
what we do.
Okay. So is your GM Chinese, born in China?
He's born in China. He was my first hire. It's important to when you make a first hire in China, you got to have someone you trust, because they can easily, he has my stamps. He could stamp money and run away, right?
Oh, wow.
So I know him. I know his family. I trust him.
Right.
I know where he lives. I know his history. And
That's
Yeah.
good. Any questions from the audience? Okay, if not, I think we'll give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you very much for listening.